I am your Rusame reader, and today I'm bringing to you the binge compilation of Sinclaire Academy by Ivy127, or more accurately, what I have finished of Sinclaire Academy. I got through Chapter 7. I'm dropping at Chapter 7. I started reading Chapter 8, but I couldn't handle the secondhand embarrassment, so I ended up dropping it. So that's what happened there. Plus, the grammar is driving me up the wall. But before we get into the binge compilation, I'd like to invite you to join the Discord, which is linked down in the description below. And there's also the Reddit, which is also linked down in the description below. That all being said, on to the binge compilation. Prologue. It's nerve-wracking when you're a transfer student at a school, especially if you're going to Sinclaire Academy. This is not the most social school in the Hangrove. Not only for humans, but also for vampires. Vampires live freely in Hangrove because they are the ones who developed and enriched this place. It is undeniable that their species is superior to humans, not only because of their number, but also because of their power. In the ranking system of the world, this, called the pyramid, they are in the highest position. Vampires have been above everyone else ever since the pyramid was established, or even before that. But even if they can, they still have laws to follow. They have to follow laws to keep our kind, the humans, safe. He hadn't put much thought about the coexistence of humans and vampires before. It was only now that they had moved to Hangrove. Even though he had always known that vampires existed, he had never encountered one, because the place where he grew up is not a big city or preposterous town like Hangrove. A simple one, Province, Florida, is the one, so the vampire population there is small. It was even believed that there was only a 2% chance of seeing a vampire there. America had lived in Florida for his whole life, and he didn't expect one day he would move to Hangrove. 3 days after settling in Hangrove, America's mother dropped the news that he would be a student in the Sinclaire Academy. He was shocked when he found out about it. He thought he was going to study in a human school, a human public school. Apart from that, the Sinclaire Academy is on a different level, and he wonders where his mom even got the money to enroll him. It's only the money left by Dad, he'd expect now. He reluctantly agreed, because even though he's not ready, he knows there's nothing he can do. Because according to his mom, everything is fine and he doesn't have anything to worry about. She said she already went through the enrollment process for him, so he felt bad to go against it. After everything that happened to them, all he wanted was for her to be happy. So now, he, America, the new boy, or, better yet, the new meat, he's so nervous right now. He feels like he wants to run away and hide under his bed, never to show his face to the world again. He would rather go back to his old house and tease his younger brother insistently instead of studying here at the Sinclaire Academy. He missed his home. He misses his life back in Florida. He misses his old school. He misses his former classmates. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath as he counted to 10. He thought of everything that happened to his family in the past 2 years, to remind himself why they moved here in the first place. He's here now. He can't turn back and run anymore. He can't do that to his own mother. His mother insisted that he would be safe here. The tall metal gates in front of the academy gave the illusion of safety, while the concrete walls hid it from outsiders. But while he was looking at the high wall earlier, he couldn't help but still wonder if it's really safe to be inside this school with vampires. Vampires murdering humans is not new. It happened before, and it will happen again. No matter how much they try to control their thirst for human blood, some of them would eventually fail. Not all vampires are under what they call a blood diet. The vampires promised that they would keep the world safe for humans, but until now, they are still working on a solution to the problem that they started. He doesn't know if the rumors were true, but some humans believe that they are testing formulas on the vampire students of Sinclaire Academy. He would go on to guess that he will also know the truth once he meets some of the students. It's pitiful to think that there are vampires willing to undergo experiments to keep their kind from coexisting with theirs, but it still doesn't change the fact that humans are dying at their hands. He bit his lip and adjusted the bag over his shoulder. He's been here in the main lobby of Sinclaire Academy for a while now, but he can't see anyone who would help him find his storeroom. America's eyes were swollen because he cried when he said goodbye to his mom when she brought him here, because, unfortunately, he would have to live in the dormitory of Sinclaire Academy while he was to study here, because it said that the students are required to stay there even on weekdays, even though his house is nearby. As to what he read from the handbook, it was for the students' safety. He sighed. He wanted to face palm and run. Why did his mom leave him right away? She didn't even help him find his dorm room. Maybe she expected that he could handle everything on his own. Well, he couldn't. Everything was new to him, and he was out of his comfort zone. So he knew he would have a hard time adjusting to this place. He just hopes that his future classmates don't have a bad attitude. By chance, maybe he could come home. Then Mom would kick him out back here too. She would tell him to suck it up because the money she paid for his tuition was wasted. Maybe she'll even add a long lecture about how money doesn't grow from trees. Are you United States of America? He was startled when he heard a voice from behind him. He turned around and saw an old woman with a clipboard. He nodded in response. The old lady was giving off a vibe that he was not used to. Since he came here to Hangrove, he hadn't attempted to catch a glimpse of her kind. This was the first time he was seeing a vampire in person. After a while, he gasped when she smiled. He immediately noticed the sharp and pointy fangs in her mouth when she spoke. Welcome to Sinclaire Academy. Chapter 1. America's point of view. Follow me, sir. My spirit woke up when I heard the old woman's voice again. I didn't do anything but follow her as she started walking towards somewhere. As we walked, I caught a glimpse of some parts of Sinclaire Academy. We passed a wide open field. The grass here is trimmed and is surrounded by different kinds of trees, so the breeze seems cool here. I can't deny that this place is very beautiful and big. My neck almost broke when I looked around. I'm sure I'll get lost here. I'm the type of person who is not great with directions. I should probably ask the vampire lady for a map, but I'd rather not say anything to her. They say it's a privilege to be accepted in this place, but right now I don't feel so privileged. In fact, as I followed the vampire lady, I started to feel like I was walking to my own doom. Okay, maybe I'm just overreacting because I'm nervous. Based on what I've read in the student handbook, drinking human blood is strictly prohibited in this place. The vampires that go here are under the blood diet, so they are required to take an alternative to quench their thirst. I took a deep breath when I saw where the old woman and I were going. There was a metal gate at the end of the path that we were walking on. Engraved on it is the crest of Sinclaire Academy, and written below is the word dusk. The gate opened automatically when we got in front of it. We went inside and walked down the cemented driveway to a building that looked like a mansion. It is quite far from the gate and surrounded by trees. According to the handbook, the human's dormitory is called Dusk. It is far from the main road of the academy because it stands in the middle of a forest. It is said that the female students reside in the east wing, while the male students reside in the west wing. I almost hit the old woman's back when she stopped walking. She faced me and looked me straight in the eye. I'll stop here, Sir America. You can find your room on your own. It's not that hard to find. She said, and then looked me from head to toe as if she was judging whether or not I would stay in this place or not. Does she do this to all transfer students, or just to me? Have a great first day, and again, welcome to Sinclaire Academy, she added before she turned around and walked out into the dusk. I bit my lower lip. First days are never great. I took a deep breath and then opened the door of my future dorm. I expected many people to greet me as I entered, but I didn't see one. The entire ground floor is quiet, so there's no one here. I looked at my wristwatch and saw 6:45 a.m. It's not breakfast time just yet, so maybe the students are still in their rooms. It's been a week since classes started here at Sinclaire Academy. This is one of the many reasons why I am nervous now. Other students are already comfortable in their classes while I'm just starting. I went up a large staircase that looked like something from the Titanic that divided the girls' and boys' rooms. When I reached the top step of the stairs leading to the west wing, a row of doors opened to me. I took out a paper from my bag that was given to me when I arrived earlier, and then looked around for my room number to the dorm. I blew my bangs that had been blocking my face, and then I held my bag tighter. Okay, room 51. Where are you? After 10 minutes, I also found my room. It's a good thing I saw it right away because I felt like my shoulder was about to give way because of the weight of the bag I was carrying. I was about to raise my hand and knock on the door, but suddenly it opened and revealed the face of a man smiling widely. He looked at me from head to toe and then let me inside. I immediately dropped my bag on the empty table on the right side of the room and sighed. I looked around and saw that my new dorm was going to be big. There's a mini fridge in the corner of the room and a door that looks like it leads to a private bathroom. I looked at the left side of the room and noticed that there were things placed there. There are posters and small papers with doodles stuck to the wall, while there's a laptop and books on the study table, neatly placed. And pillows scattered on the bed with a purple bedsheet. Then I turned my gaze to the right side of the room and saw that there was a large wardrobe and simple study table with a black lampshade. I also noticed that there were boxes laying on the side of the bed where I put the bag I was carrying. I'm sure it's my stuff that got here before me. I took a deep breath and then rubbed my shoulders. I will stay in this dorm room my entire junior year. I don't know yet if I will be studying here my senior year, or even if we'll stay in Hangrove. So the best thing I could do for now is cast away all my negative thoughts since I'm already here and there's no backing out. I'm Philippines, by the way. I'll be your roommate, the boy suddenly said. His tone of voice was friendly, and he looked cheerful. But just call me Phil. Philip is too boyish. He extended his hand, and I accepted it with a smile. I'm America. Do you have a nickname? I nodded. May. Welcome to Sinclaire Academy, May. The teachers assigned me to give you a tour of campus and take you to your classes today, he said, and went to his study table, and then he faced the laptop that was on it. Did you have a hard time finding the dorm? I nodded. Kinda, because I haven't seen anyone before that I could ask where I should go or what I should do. I couldn't see the reaction on his face because when I said that, his back was turned to me. But I heard him chuckle. Don't worry, almost everyone who is new here has been through the same thing. And you really won't meet anyone outside at this time. No one usually goes out before breakfast time. When he finished what he was doing on his laptop, he closed it and then faced me with a smile. Come on, I'll give you a tour of the campus before we have breakfast. Is your school bag ready? I nodded and took my school bag that I had just put down. Let's go, he said, and then he walked out of the room. I could do nothing but follow him. I immediately noticed that there were people outside today. Some of them were walking in the hallway, while others were just coming out of their rooms. Are you hungry? A little, I answered and then smiled. Promise it's a quick tour. It won't take more than 10 minutes, he said, then took my hand and pulled me down the big staircase. We were able to leave the dorm together with other students. It seemed like it was quiet here, but now I could hear the chatter of students and the thump of their footsteps. Funny how a lot of things changed after just a few minutes. Phil took me to the middle of the open field that I had seen earlier while the vampire lady and I were going to dusk. Some of the students were walking around here looking at us, so I bowed down in shame. This is a big essay, so what I'm going to teach you here is the basics, Phil began. The place where you are standing now is called the crossing field. It'll serve as a compass here at the academy because you can see all parts of the essay from that spot. He made me face south and pointed at the building that stood there. The main building is Lion. I guess that's where you came from before you went to dusk. I nodded. He turned and then pointed to the direction where dusk was. Dusk is a lion, the dorm of humans, he said. Then his finger landed on a building near dusk. That's Dawn, the vampire's dorm. Don't go in there unaccompanied. I nodded. I took a breath and then looked carefully at the two mansion-like structures in front of me. The two dorms are almost identical in design. The only difference being that dawn is bigger than dusk because there are probably more students that live in there. Is it dangerous there? I asked Phil. I don't know. I haven't been inside yet. But for me, that place seems to have a vibe that says, "Go away, humans. You are not welcome here." Phil was right. Dawn was a different place. That place looks intimidating. Its main door was closed, as well as all the windows, and it was very quiet around it. It was very different from dusk, which was now full of noise from the students coming out. That place looks really scary. Phil shrugged. I don't think so. It just gives off dark and mysterious vibes. Keep in mind that we're not allowed to go in there unless we're invited to come inside. Okay, moving on. Phil grabbed my shoulder and turned me to face the west. He pointed out two buildings standing there. The Eastwood and Hangrove buildings are lines. The dining hall is also in Eastwood. Behind that, there is a large open space for fieldwork. Then he made me face east, and he pointed at the building there. Lastly, that's the auditorium building. It's rarely used. He said, I remembered reading about that in the student handbook. I noticed that there weren't many extracurricular activities here, unlike my old school. Okay, May. That's only 6 buildings. You should be able to remember all of them, I said to myself. Phil looked at the wristwatch he was wearing and then looked at me with a smile. Just 10 minutes before breakfast time. There are other buildings here, but you will know about them too when you've been here for a long time. The important thing is that you already know some of the basic information. I hovered over him as he pulled me into the dining hall. I was amazed when we entered it because of the grand design of the surroundings. Because it was almost like a fancy restaurant. The color of almost all of the furnishings was cream, and there was a large chandelier at the top of the room, and glass windows all around. Phil and I sat at a table near one of the windows. The scenery here was beautiful because the plants and trees outside were so prominent. Do you want to get some food? You can leave your bag here on the table while you get it. It won't get lost or stolen, Phil said, and I just nodded. We both went to the long table full of food. He handed me a plate and a bottle of orange juice, and then I started to choose food. I got 2 pieces of pancake and bacon. This is not the normal amount that I eat, but I have the morning jitters today, and I feel like I won't finish the food if I take a lot. Phil and I ate in silence, every few seconds stopping and turned to the entrance to the dining hall. Are you looking for them? He asked, pertaining to the vampire students. He probably noticed my actions, so he said that. I nodded out of embarrassment. Am I that obvious? There was an incident that happened yesterday. That's why they're not here today. We're suspecting that it's something to do with their diet. Maybe they changed the formula again, so they were allowed to not go to their classes this morning. I just nodded at what he said. I didn't ask for details, but I confirmed that the rumors are true. There are tests being done on vampire students who study here. I couldn't help but stare at everyone in the dining hall. It was interesting, and then I continued eating, while I observed my surroundings. I look at them because they look like normal students who are doing okay with their lives. Will they like me? We moved to the Hangrove because Mom wanted a fresh start after what happened to our family 2 years ago. She didn't even ask my opinion about her decision because maybe she thought that she didn't have to. Because I can't leave anything important in Florida. I only had one friend there, and she already left years ago. The only thing I'm worried about is the welfare of Canada. My younger brother, because he will make memories here in Hangrove, not the place where I grew up. I shook my head. This is not the time for me to revisit the past. There were 15 minutes left in breakfast time when Phil and I finished eating and left the dining hall. I thought I'd go through my locker first to reduce the amount of books I was carrying. When I told Phil this, he scratched his head. Okay, but I have to go back to dusk. I left my homework next to my laptop. Can you go there alone? I nodded. Just wait for me. In front of your locker. What's your first class? I'll take you to the classroom later, he said. Chemistry. We're the same, he said happily. I was quite happy with that, since he said it meant that I would not be a loner in my first class here at Sinclaire Academy. Or if you get lost, just ask the other students, he added before he turned and walked back to dusk. I was left alone in the hallway. It was surprising that there were no other students here today. I looked for what was mine in the row of lockers, but I had trouble finding it because there were no names written on the front of the lockers, just numbers. While I was walking, I opened my bag to separate the books from what I wouldn't need this morning, and I couldn't find the paper where I wrote the passcode of my locker's lock. Shit! I sat on the floor and dropped my bag when I bumped into something. I could hear my things falling on the floor because the whole hallway was so quiet right now. My hands immediately went to my sore bottom. I didn't see what I hit, but I think it was a solid wall because the impact of my fall was quite strong. This is the first morning, and I immediately got hurt. What is this? Sinclaire Academy doesn't seem to be welcoming me. Watch where you're going, human. I heard an irritated male voice. Shit. Chapter 2. I was internally screaming when I realized it was not a wall. I still hit the floor today, and I still don't look at the face of the person I hit, but I feel he is still in front of me. It's like I want to ask the Lord to take me. I look like an angel, so I'd fit in heaven. It's normal for two students to bump into each other in the hallway, but why do I feel so strange right now? Is it because this is the first time I've ever been this close to a vampire? Suddenly, the man I bumped into grabbed my wrist tightly and he pulled me upright. I could feel the coldness of his skin while he was doing it. He was strong. And I almost fell again. Luckily, I managed to steady myself. Once I was standing properly, I immediately withdrew my hand, and then I bent down and looked at my shoes as if they were the most interesting thing in the world. Do I have to apologize to him? Is it my fault we collided? Why won't he just leave? I tried to speak, but nothing came out of my mouth. I felt annoyed because it was not even 8 o'clock in the morning, and my bad luck was already starting. I looked forward and noticed that the man in front of me is wearing a new shanka. A black jacket and 3 white stripes were on 2 sides, and that written on the design was Adidas on his jacket. And lastly, his shoes. I closed my eyes and stepped back towards him. I couldn't see anything, but I felt the man step closer to me. So I continued backing away, but the man also seemed to continue walking towards me until my back collided with something. I felt what I bumped into this time. I am sure this time that I'm leaning on a wall, because apart from the fact that it didn't speak or get angry with me, the surface is smooth and concrete. I still didn't open my eyes because I knew the man was in front of me. I could sense that he was very close to me. Because of that, I felt as if the oxygen around me suddenly ran out. I felt his hands on the wall. I'm sure his arms are acting as a barrier on both sides of me, so I can't get out even if I try. Damn it, I'm trapped. What does he intend to do to me? And why did our simple collision end up like this? I still couldn't open my eyes, but I couldn't stop being intrigued by the man in front of me, and what he looked like. Curiosity killed the cat. But if I'm going to die now, I want to see the person who will kill me so I can report him to the Lord when I go to heaven. That's why I slowly opened my eyes. The white hair of the man stood out to me. It looked untamed. It's like he ran his hair through it and didn't comb it. I was confused when I saw his hair first, not his face. I looked forward, my eyes widened, and my heart beat faster when I realized that it was because his face was hovering over my neck. I suddenly felt fear. I bit my lip and took a deep breath. I felt tears welling up in my eyes and running down my cheeks. I knew studying here wasn't a good idea. Lord, forgive me for all the sins I have committed. Please tell Mama I forgive her for banishing me here, but I will still haunt her because she is responsible for my death. Please also tell my baby brother, Canada, that if he puts my t-shirt on his head again, I will throw his PSP inside the volcano. My inner monologue was interrupted when I felt the man's hand on my waist and his lips on my neck. I felt heavy, like I had lost all the strength I had, so I couldn't push him away. Aside from that, my legs and arms suddenly felt like jelly. I closed my eyes again and silently cried. You smell good, he whispered. I felt him inhaling by my neck and opening his mouth slightly as he held my waist tighter. I bet you taste even better. Several seconds have passed since the man spoke, but still nothing happened. Suddenly, I felt him release his hands from my waist and the loss of his presence. I opened my eyes and saw the hallway full of students. The man I bumped into earlier is gone. He disappeared into thin air. I remained leaning against the wall. I still couldn't move my body, and I can't believe what just happened a couple seconds ago. A freaking vampire almost bit me and drank my blood in the middle of a hallway of Sinclaire Academy. Holy hell! I observed the students around me. Looks like they know nothing about what happened earlier, and I still can't get over it. I came to my senses when I realized that Phil was snapping his fingers in front of my face. Hey, why are you so pale? What's the matter? I stuttered, and then adjusted my clothes. Should I tell him what happened? If I told him what happened, that I was almost attacked by a vampire a while ago, would he believe me? Has this happened before? Did you get lost? Yeah, that's what happened. I lied. I let out an awkward laugh. I got lost. He sighed. Why are you so pale? He asked, looking worried. Because I'm anemic. I lied again. What does that have to do with getting lost? Nothing, I answered. I only turn pale when I'm lost. You're also crazy. But in fairness, it's not obvious from your looks, he said with a laugh. Come on, we still need to find your locker before class starts. What's your locker number? I muttered my answer and then let him pull me towards the place where my locker was. As we were walking, I looked around to see if we passed the man with white hair and wearing an ushanka and a black jacket with white stripes and white shoes, but I didn't see anything. Unfortunately, I didn't get a good look at his face, at the man who almost attacked me. So I have no idea what he looked like outside of that. One of the things I fear about studying here in Sinclaire Academy is what almost happened to me earlier. Not all vampires are controlled by those in charge. Has there ever been an incident here at Sinclaire Academy where a human died because a vampire drank their blood? Murdering humans for blood is against the law, and the Vampire Council is strict when it comes to law regarding this. That's what Father used to always tell me. This is your locker. I was brought back to reality when Phil spoke again. I saw him pointing at my locker. Hurry up and put your things in there so we won't be late. The teachers here aren't considerate when it comes to tardiness. I quickly put the books I didn't need in my locker and then looked at Phil as he pulled me to our first class of the day. I found out that in the morning classes, those of the same species are in the same class, so humans and vampires only get together in the elective classes that are scheduled every afternoon. After our morning classes, Phil and I went together to the dining hall to have lunch. We got food, and then we went to the place where we were sitting for breakfast earlier. I was about to eat my food when I noticed all the students looking at the double doors in the dining hall. I don't know why they did that, so I just imitated them. After a short while, the doors slowly opened, revealing creatures that I have been dreading to see since this morning. You can easily recognize vampires based on their physical traits alone. Their elegance and beauty is amazing. Their complexion, aura, and beauty are far from the average human standard, and they know very well how to carry themselves. When I was still living in Florida, I only saw vampires on the news because of the small population there. In the human school that I studied at, many of my female classmates were obsessed with vampires. I didn't understand then why they were so captivated, because I was never interested in hanging out with them and preferred to stay at home all the time. But now I understand why they were fangirling like that. It turns out these creatures are insanely beautiful. The vampires entered the dining hall one after the other. Some of them went straight to the food areas, while others socialized with the humans. Aside from their insanely good looks, they all seemed normal. They acted like normal teenagers, laughing and messing around, chasing each other. I continued to watch them until I forgot about the food. The way you look at them, it's like you've never seen vampires before. I looked at Phil when he said that, and I saw him smirking at me. I just looked at him and smiled nervously. If only he knew. Hey Phil, who's with you? A voice behind me suddenly said. I turned around and saw a beautiful vampire staring at me while hugging a bunch of books close to her chest. I couldn't help but blink at her a few times. He's my new roommate, Phil said as he pointed at me with his fork. The girl nodded and her mouth turned into an O shape. She sat next to me, then put her books on the table. I'm Vietnam, she said. She then smiled and held out her hand in front of me. I accepted it, even though my hand was clammy, and we shook hands. America. Just M.A. Where have you been, Viet? Phil asked, then wiped his lips with a white handkerchief. It's been a week since class started, but you rarely show up with me. Viet took one of the books she had with her and opened it. I'm always busy during the first week of class. You're not used to it. I'm still struggling with my afternoon subjects, because, I can't be satisfied. Viet turned her head to me. Yo, America, what are your afternoon subjects? I paused for a moment and tried to recall my schedule. Literature is my next class. Turns out we're in the same one. You want to come with me to the classroom? Asked Viet. Because Phil's next class is different. I just nodded and then continued eating. Even though she's a vampire, I don't want to let her know that I'm not comfortable with people like her, because she seems nice. You look uncomfortable, Viet suddenly said to me, and I looked at her. I saw her looking at me too. How so? She smiled. You're barely moving. Really? I didn't even notice. Leave him alone, Viet, Phil reprimanded, to which Viet just laughed. I'm not doing anything. It's still a defense. She smirked and then returned her gaze to the book she was holding. You should eat your food. You need that to survive, you know, she said without looking at me. I can manage, swiftly I answered. Food is the least of my worries right now, because my next class would be filled with vampires. Viet shrugged. Suit yourself. After a while, Phil bombarded Viet with questions. She answered them, one after the other, without looking up. I remained quiet as they jumped from one topic to another because I didn't know anything about what they were talking about. Phil stopped talking when he noticed someone enter the dining hall. I turned around and noticed that almost all of the humans and vampires were looking to this part of the room. I followed their gazes until I saw a beautiful vampire girl walk in the dining hall, followed by two beautiful vampire guys. A lot of students gasped when they entered the room, but I still remained quiet because my eyes were too focused on one of the guys. He was just like the other vampire guy who came with him. He towered over the vampire girl, but what made him eye-catching was his physical features. He had blue hair with a bit of white stripes and, lastly, stars on his hair and a well-defined face that showcased his narrow jaw and perfectly pointed nose. He was wearing a black t-shirt that clung to his body like wet tissue, exhibiting his well-sculpted muscles. He had an impressive expression on his face that seemed to say he'd rather be anywhere but here, and he was radiating a dark, mysterious aura as if saying something bad would happen to anyone who came near to him. I felt shivers run down my spine as I stared at him, because of how insanely good-looking he was. I couldn't believe how shamelessly I was gaping at him. The vampire girl and the vampire guys walked towards an empty table at the center of the dining hall. When they were seated, the students began to whisper loudly. They didn't seem to care if the three could hear them. The vampire girl smirked before turning her attention to the two vampire guys sitting across from her. Based on the look on her face, it seems that she's amused that the others are whispering about them. Oh my gosh, Viet suddenly said. She obviously couldn't believe what she saw. Hell no, Phil whispered softly, then shook his head, as if he also couldn't believe what he saw. They're here, Viet exclaimed, as she looked in the direction of the table where the three vampires were sitting. What's up? I asked in surprise. The three vampires who just came in obviously were important to get reactions like that out of everyone. Viet and Phil looked at me with disbelief. Are you serious? Viet asked me in disbelief. Yes, I answered. Why? What's happening? It's possible that you don't know them, Phil said incredulously. Should I ask if I should know something about them? I mumbled. I just started studying here at Sinclaire Academy today, so it was only natural that I didn't know who those vampires are, even though they're still famous. Wait a minute, I haven't absorbed what I saw, Viet said while shaking her head. What is it? Aren't you going to answer me? I just want to know what their names are, and then what has caused them to be famous. I know I sounded demanding, but it's hard to deal with feeling clueless when you're the only one clueless about what's going on. Viet shook her head again. Just wait. Phil sighed and then looked at me. The girl is named New Zealand. Does that ring a bell to you? He asked. Based on the expression of his face, he seems to be waiting for my answer. New Zealand, New Zealand, New Zealand? I repeatedly mentioned the name he said in my mind, but it wasn't really familiar to me, so I shook my head. The guy sitting in front of her is Australia, her twin brother, Viet added. I looked at the table of the 3 vampires. At first glance, I wouldn't have thought New Zealand and Australia were twins because the only thing they had in common was their blue hair. But they happened to smile at the same time when I turned to them, and I saw their resemblance. Hey! Don't stare! They'll notice you! Phil then looked at me and patted me on the arm. I'm not the only one looking, huh? I defended, and then I quickly pointed to the girls at the table next to us. Just don't look, Phil said with a frown. And the other one is Russia Sinclaire, Viet said while smiling as if she already knew what my reaction was going to be. So, Russia is the name of the insanely good-looking guy with a mysterious aura, huh? Russia Sinclaire, as in Sinclaire Academy? I said in surprise. Phil nodded. His great-grandfather is one of the ones who built Sinclaire Academy. Does that mean that Russia's family owns the school? Wow, he must be rich. Okay, now I know who they are, but why were so many people surprised when they entered the dining hall? Phil leaned over me and lowered his voice. There was a rumor that at the beginning of summer vacation, they would not be here at Sinclaire Academy this year. No one knew their whereabouts during the entire vacation. When they didn't show up on the first week of class, we all assumed those rumors were true. But it's just a rumor, Viet said in disbelief. It seems that even she can't believe what she saw. Or maybe change of plans. Hey, why did you all stare when you saw them come in? Girl, can you hear yourself? Those 3 are the hottest vampires in town. Everyone is bound to stare at them when they enter a room, Phil explained. Why? I didn't even get to finish what I was going to say because Viet suddenly signaled me with her finger to shut my mouth. We cannot answer any more of your questions, my dear, she said. We can update you on the latest gossip about them, Phil said. And tell you the basic information about them, Viet added. Chapter 3. America's point of view. But it's up to you to get to know them. I mentally replayed what Viet and Phil had said over and over in my head. For some reason, I was drawn to New Zealand, Australia, and Russia. Is this how they affect everyone? Or was it just to me? They seemed to be a big deal around here, but why was I so interested in them? I shook my head. I shouldn't be thinking about students I barely know right now. It's only my first day here in Sinclaire Academy, so it's best if I focus my attention on things that matter. I barely knew the layout of the place, and I had no idea what the attitude of the students was here. The only thing I was familiar with were the policies I read in the student handbook, and based on what I saw in the few hours I spent here, I realized how underprepared I was, because this place was very different compared to where I used to study. Almost everything here in Sinclaire Academy looks new and modern. It's obvious that the students who come here to study are from luxury families based on their clothing alone. There is no uniform here, and everyone is free to wear whatever they want. I'm just wearing a simple t-shirt and pants today. I told you they'd be students here again. You just don't believe me. I heard a student whisper behind me. I swear, every single student here was enthralled by the three of them. But they're not the only ones coming back. I heard a person who I assume he was talking to whisper back. Even before the end of lunch hour, another rumor was spread. Aside from New Zealand, Australia, and Russia, there is another former student here again. They said her name was Poland, and someone said she was seen in the hallways this morning. According to Viet, Poland is said to be the fourth member of Australia, New Zealand, and Russia's group, and they were called the Fearsome Four. She said Poland and New Zealand used to be known as the Queens of Sinclaire Academy, but one day Poland left without anyone knowing why. But before she left, she made it clear to everyone that Russia was hers. I asked Phil if Poland and Russia were together, and his answer was, she wished they were together, but Russia didn't seem to give a fuck about her. Did that mean that Russia gave her hope? They said Poland is beautiful and that is the type of student who makes everyone know who she is in Sinclaire Academy and what her position in the social hierarchy is. Viet and Phil also explained that apart from the pyramid, they also follow what is called a social hierarchy here in Sinclaire Academy. It is said that what your rank in the pyramid is also your rank there. This is what the students tell you where humans will be. Humans obviously belong to the bottom of the social hierarchy, while the Fearsome Four were on the top. Sinclaire Academy is a school where social status, rank, and blood are everything, Phil said. Social status, rank, and blood. Of those three, I only understood social status. I shook my head and wondered what rank and blood could mean. After lunch hour, Viet and I went to our next class together. This was an elective class, so humans and vampires are in the class together. I couldn't shake off the uneasiness I was feeling while in the same classroom as vampires. I'm not really used to their presence. Viet played a game on her phone while we waited for our teacher to arrive. According to her, when 20 minutes pass and there's still no teacher, we can leave the classroom. 10 minutes remaining, I said while tapping my desk with my hand. They will come, and trust me, the wait will be worth it. What is wrong with the teacher? Why are you so excited for me to meet him? I had asked while we were walking to the classroom earlier. Viet had been talking about our teacher. Just wait. I opened my bag to take out my leather-bound notebook and opened it, and I started drawing. Ever since I was younger, I had always loved to draw. I don't like to go out of the house, so this was the only thing that I could do. I was sketching the eyes of the girl sitting in the front row when a guy entered the classroom. I noticed that Viet immediately hid her phone when she saw who had entered. This was the most alert I had seen her. Who is he? I asked her as I looked at the man who had just entered the classroom. He seemed to be in his early 20s. He's United Nations, she replied with a smile. I was surprised by what she said. That means the man who just arrived is United Nations, our teacher for this elective class. He looks so young, I whispered. She smirked. Be thankful you're not going to be bored in this subject. Mr. UN is an eye candy, and he's also the most awesome teacher here in Sinclaire Academy. I shook my head while chuckling under my breath. I'm not interested in that. But is he a vampire? She shrugged. I guess you could say that. I was confused by her answer, but I didn't ask what she meant because because Mr. UN had already gotten in front of the class to speak. I'm United Nations, and the reason why I'm introducing myself to the class again is because of him. He said, then looked at me. We looked at each other, so I bowed. Viet elbowed me and motioned for me to stand up. I followed. What's your name, newcomer? America, sir. He nodded and leaned on his desk. Did you know we have the tradition here for new students? Are you ready? I shook my head and then turned to Viet. She gave me a peace sign. She seems to have forgotten to have told me that as well. Only a Q&A will be done. Things about my subject, you will answer me. It's easy. I gulped, and mentally cursed myself for being unprepared. A Q&A for me was 10 times worse than introducing yourself in front of the class. I thought I would die because of the pressure to do well, but luckily I managed to calm myself down and answered all the questions correctly. It helped that I had paid attention on the classes in my previous school. When I was finished, I quietly sat down, feeling extremely proud of myself because, for once, I didn't embarrass myself. Mr. UN started to teach, and time moved quickly. When the bell rang, signaling the end of class, my classmates immediately started fixing their things, but before we could finally stand up, Mr. UN clapped his hands together to get our attention. Did you think I'm going to let you go without homework? He said while smiling, causing most of the students to groan. You know the drill for our class. For today's homework, write an essay about our next topic. I sighed. Even though Sinclaire Academy is different, it's still a school, so homework won't go away. Viet walked me to the next class I'd have. Language is my next subject, and hers is different. The education system requires that every student learns at least 2 languages before they can graduate. I already finished one at my old school, and the next class would be my second one. When I entered the classroom, I noticed that there were only 2 empty seats left. They were both at the back and both next to each other. I kept my head down and scurried to one of them. I could feel the glances my classmates gave me as I walked. I guess it was because I was new here. I was about to sit down in one of the 2 empty seats when I heard someone speak up. Hey, new boy. I turned to the direction it came from, to face a woman who was standing at the front of the class and smiling. There were 2 people behind her. I think they were her henchmen. What do you think you're doing? She asked, and then raised her eyebrow at me. Sitting? My answer sounded like a question because I wasn't sure what I should answer him. I didn't do anything wrong. I just sat down. All right, take your seats. The arrival of our language teacher cut the girl off. Instead of continuing what she had to say, she and her henchmen went to their respective seats. But before turning her attention to our language teacher, she whispered something to the girl sitting behind her while looking at me. I felt uncomfortable because of what she did, but I ignored it. I just focused my attention on the front of the room. Our language teacher just acknowledged my presence by nodding at me, which I am very grateful for, that there was no Q&A or introduce yourself in this subject. The class had been going on for almost 10 minutes when someone caught everyone's attention. Russia Sinclaire stood by the door of the classroom, looking awfully bored. His forehead is still wrinkled. Almost every girl in class gasped when they saw him and immediately fixed themselves. I wanted to roll my eyes at them, but I stopped myself. I turned my gaze to Russia and noticed that he was now wearing a leather jacket. He ran a hand through his tousled hair before acknowledging our teacher. Glad you could join us today, Mr. Sinclaire. Our language teacher greeted Russia. For some reason, she looked amused instead of mad. Most teacher would scold you when you arrive late in class, but that's not what's happening right now. I'm sorry for being late. I got caught up in the hallway. Rusha answered with a low voice. It's all right. Now take your seat. Rusha put his hand in his pocket before he walked back towards the only empty seat in the classroom, which was next to mine. When he got close to it, he took off the jacket he was wearing and placed it on his desk. Then he pushed back the chair and sat down. The sound of his chair being dragged rang through my ear. I stopped breathing for a second because of the nervousness. I slowly looked around and saw that the women who were giving me a bad look earlier were talking. I took my eyes off of him and tried to focus on the lesson, even though I couldn't listen to our teacher properly. Because of our close proximity, I had a hard time ignoring Rusha's cold aura and his do not disturb vibe. I closed my eyes and one thought ran through my head repeatedly. Rusha Sinclaire is my seatmate. Rusha freaking Sinclaire. Rusha's point of view. Self-control. That was what I've been exerting for over the past hour. It's been a while since I've been tempted to touch America, even though I know I shouldn't. Faithful, his attention was focused on the window next to his seat. The seat he shouldn't have. Was it wrong for me to think about biting him? America's point of view. He looked down and didn't look at anyone in the class. On the other hand, our classmates kept on throwing subtle glances at him. I couldn't blame them, though. Rusha Sinclaire was intriguing, after all. Is he aware that I am looking at him and the other students? Was he just choosing to ignore me and everyone else? I jumped from my seat the moment our class ended, and immediately took my bag off the classroom and left with my head bowed. I just stopped walking down the hallway when I noticed someone blocking my way. I raised my head, and the body of a man turned his back to me. The man who I saw turn towards me was Rusha Sinclaire, who I almost had bumped into. Is bumping into me your hobby? He asked, using an annoyed tone. I didn't understand what he meant, because, as far as I remember, I had never bumped into him. Apart from that, I also couldn't believe that he was in front of me right now. So I kept looking away from him. So now you're avoiding my gaze. But earlier, you were staring at me for 1 full hour, America. Busted. How did you know my name? I managed to ask, in spite of the shock I was feeling. He wasn't there yet when our language teacher did roll call, so how did he know my name? Moments passed, but I didn't get an answer from him. I looked at his face and saw that his gaze was focused on my hand. I was about to react to what he was doing when he grabbed my hand and held it tightly. I tried to pull it away from him, but he wouldn't let me. What's his fucking problem? Hey, let go, I said as I struggled to escape his grip. I looked up at him in the eyes, and what I saw made my breath hitch. His eyes were dilated, and a dangerous glint was in them. That struck panic into me. I tried to escape his grip once again, but he really didn't want to let go of me. My heart started to race, and I froze where I was standing. I tried to look away from him, but I couldn't. It was as if something was stopping me. I tried to open my mouth, but no words came out. In an instant, he let go of my hand and pushed me into the classroom where we came from earlier. It was now empty because all of the students had left. I lost my footing and stumbled inside. Good thing I didn't fall. I heard him close the door, so I looked at him once again and saw that his eyes were still dilated and his pupils were becoming darker. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It felt like cold water was poured onto me when I realized what was happening. Rusha Sinclaire wants my blood. I stepped away from him, but he walked towards me. He He was about to take another step closer to me when suddenly the door opened and New Zealand and Australia walked in. The twins looked around for a few seconds. They were likely assessing the situation. Then the next thing I knew, New Zealand was next to me and Australia had closed the door. Australia walked over to Russia's side and then he whispered something to her. "Are you okay?" I heard New Zealand ask me. I wasn't able to answer her because my eyes were still fixed on Russia, the guy who would have drank my blood by now if his friends didn't come in and stop him. As Australia continued to whisper things to him, his eyes slowly turned back to normal. After a short while, I saw him nod to whatever Australia was telling him. I hugged myself for comfort and then closed my eyes. I could still feel my body. I hugged myself for comfort and closed my eyes. I could still feel the fear in my body because it wasn't easy to shrug off. I couldn't believe that a vampire almost drank my blood. My blood! "Calm down, May. You're safe now. You just need to get out of here," I told myself. I took a couple deep breaths and then opened my eyes. His face appeared to me. I couldn't look at him after what had almost happened, so I looked down. As I was staring at the floor, I noticed his shoes. He was wearing a pair of white shoes. It was like cold water was dumped at me again when I remembered what happened this morning. White shoes and untamed white hair. Russia was also the vampire who tried to drink my blood this morning. Suddenly, I felt nauseous. I wanted to run away from this room as far as possible, but my legs don't want to move. "Are you okay?" New Zealand asked again. I almost forgot and blinked to stop the tears that were threatening to fall down my face. She was right next to me. "Are you okay?" she asked for the third time as she touched my forehead. I didn't want to answer, even though I saw genuine concern on her face. I couldn't help but flinch at her touch. I just nodded my head at her before wiping the tears that were about to fall. "Be patient with Russia. He's not usually like that." She smiled at me before giving Russia a quick glance. "You still have class, don't you?" she asked me. I nodded involuntarily. "Come, I'll take you," she said while still smiling, then helped me out of the classroom. Russia and I locked eyes before I could completely leave, so I quickly averted my eyes from him. New Zealand's heels quickly clicked as we walked through the empty hallway. Maybe students are in their respective classes by now, except for New Zealand, Australia, and Russia. How could they both know where Russia and I were a while ago? If you want a quiet life here at Sinclaire Academy, and you don't want to be in the limelight, I suggest you don't talk to a single soul about what happened, New Zealand told me as we walked. She didn't have to tell me that, because I didn't plan on bragging to anyone that Russia Sinclaire almost drank my blood. But how could she say those words so nonchalantly? The way they came out of her mouth so easily, making me want to question everything that just happened. Does Russia do that often? And does she clean up his mess every time? I thought vampires and humans coexist peacefully in this place. What happened earlier doesn't look like peacefully coexisting to me. I looked down. "I prefer to keep a low profile," I answered truthfully, because that was what I really intend to do for the rest of my stay here in Sinclaire Academy. "Good, because if you talk to anyone about what happened, gossip will spread like wildfire and it will be dangerous for you and Russia because of the social hierarchy." "Social hierarchy is too big a deal here for you, isn't it?" I blurted out. Instead of getting mad, New Zealand laughed at me. "Trust me, sweetheart, the social hierarchy is more than what you think it is." I shrugged. "Vampires, go figure." She laughed again. "I like you. You're funny." Did I hear that right? Did New Zealand really just say she likes me, a mere human? New Zealand stopped walking when we were opposite a classroom, so I imitated her. "Well, here we are," she said. I frowned when I realized that we were opposite of room 334, the classroom of my next class. I didn't mention my room number to New Zealand, so how did she know that? I meant what I said earlier. Being caught in the limelight is not good for you unless you completely understand the social hierarchy, she said. The expression in her eyes was telling me that she wasn't just saying those words to scare me. She was giving me a genuine piece of advice. I know what happened earlier was somewhat traumatic. The word somewhat was an understatement from what happened earlier. It was a miracle that I was still going to my next class and not crying my eyes out in the dorm after a traumatic experience like that. I'm the one asking for forgiveness for what Russia did. He's not usually like that. Maybe he just got bloodlust when he smelled your blood because you're new here and he's not used to your blood scent. She clasped her hand on my shoulder to keep my attention. Our instinct causes us to lose control sometimes. It has been years since Russia lost his control, and I'm surprised that it happened now. I also know what happened this morning. We both know that it can't happen again, so as a precaution, I'll tell you. She looked me straight in the eyes, making me focus on what she was about to say. Stay away from Russia, for your sake and his. Do vampires often get out of control? I asked Phil as I lay on my bed. He was doing his homework while I was feeling my new bed. Phil glanced at me, looking confused. The conversation I had with New Zealand earlier keeps replaying in my mind, so I want to know the answer to my question. Beats me. You should talk to Viet about that, not me, he answered. You're the next best thing. He sighed before facing me. I'm not an expert on that topic. All I know is that the vampires only lose control when they're very hungry or they smell something very appetizing in blood. They call it bloodlust. Why do you ask? Nothing. I was just curious. Drinking human blood is strictly prohibited here. Maybe you already know that. As in, forbidden, really. He nodded. That's why they formulate a blood diet here. Besides, a vampire student can't go here with an actual blood diet. The Academy can provide them with an alternative. Oh? Does that mean New Zealand and her friends are under the diet too? Yes, all vampires say that it's a little sacrifice that they have to do for the future of their kind. He shrugged and looked at me suspiciously. You know, I noticed you don't know much about vampire society. Human and vampires have coexisted for hundreds of years. You should have at least learned the basics. Because I have no interest in learning about them. Trust me, dude. You need to know as much information about them as you can get if you want to study here, he said. At your school before, there weren't vampires, were there? I shook my head. It was rare to see a vampire back in Florida because the vampire population wasn't that big there. Florida? That's where we lived before we moved here. It's small compared to Hangrove, but I felt much safer there. I don't blame you. There are so many vampires here that it should be called Vampire Town instead of Hangrove. He chuckled. I grew up here, so I'm already used to it. But it's not too late to learn about them. I distracted myself for hours so that I didn't think about the stuff that had happened earlier. I talked to Phil again, did my homework, cleaned things, and ate a lot of snacks from earlier. And now it's past midnight, and I'm laying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, while Phil snores quietly. I should sleep, now if I wanted to be sane tomorrow, but I couldn't. Now that it's silent and I have nothing else to do, my mind keeps returning to what happened earlier. I only know one thing that can help me now. I quietly got up and rummaged through my bag. I took my leather-bound notebook from here and went to the study table. I opened it and turned the lamp on, and I started to draw. I allowed myself to be carried away as I do my thing. I held my pencil tighter as I sketched two black piercing orbs, the image of someone I know I should be avoiding. Russia Sinclaire. I drew everything I remembered about him, because I know that if I closed my eyes and was tempted to sleep, he would haunt my dreams. Chapter 4. America's point of view. It's been a month since Russia tried to drink my blood. Since then, I haven't had any interaction, since I decided to take New Zealand's advice seriously. I avoided Russia and made sure he couldn't get close to me. I moved seats in our language class so we wouldn't be next to each other, and every time I met him in the hallway, I went the other way. Being attacked by a vampire leaves a mark on you, and it's better to be safe than sorry. I often notice New Zealand looked at me whenever she's near me. Sometimes she even smiles at me. I don't know why, though. Her attitude is confusing to me. She seems nice, even though her friends look intimidating. You know, I've been noticing New Zealand has been looking at you for a while now, Phil commented while we ate lunch. He sounded suspicious of me. Maybe because you realized we are beautiful together, I answered jokingly. Via threw a tissue at me, while Phil frowned. I dropped my fork and looked at them both. But seriously, I don't know why. I lied. If I told the truth, they wouldn't believe me anyway. The attention left me when almost all the students in the dining hall looked at the double doors, and the fearsome four entered. Like everyone else, I couldn't help but stare at them too, especially Poland. Poland showed herself on the second day here. I was awestruck by her beauty the first time I saw her walking in the dining hall. But I wasn't alone. I remembered that everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at her when she came in with her friends. The four of them sat at their usual table in the middle of the hall. Poland sat between Australia and Russia, while New Zealand sat next to her brother. As usual, everyone's eyes were on them. Oh, if Australia looked at me and smiled, I might be in heaven, Viet said, before glancing dreamily at Australia. Especially if it's Russia, no? Phil said, and then they both laughed. I just shook my head at them. Viet sighed after laughing. Hey, no, don't get your hopes up. The word smile is not in his vocabulary, eh? How so? I asked. She turned to face me. Tell me, in the time you've been here in Sinclaire Academy, have you ever seen Russia show any emotion? I'm not complaining, but I hope he shows emotion at least once, just so it's not in my dreams to see his smiling his face. I stopped myself from laughing when Viet said that. Well, someone's a fan. Fangirl, I teased. She stuck her tongue out at me. Being a fangirl is the only exciting thing in my life. After a while, Viet took out a stainless steel box from her bag. She opened it and took a syringe out with red liquid. What's that? Animal blood mixed with a small percentage of human blood and the formula, she answered. She sighed before sticking the needle in her skin. Then she bit her lip, probably because of the pain. Human blood? When Viet looked at me, she must have noticed the confused expression on my face, so she explained what she was doing. This is our blood dosage. As part of our blood diet, we have to inject it regularly to stop our body from craving human blood. The formula that the Vampire Council developed is its base. Every week, we are given different versions, and we have to observe for a few days whether our body will reject it or not. If our body is okay with it, the council will continue to give us the same version, but they will reduce the human blood less and less until we get used to it being less. We need to do this continuously, because if we stop, we would crave a huge amount of human blood, she said. I've been injecting the same mixture for 2 weeks now. My body is starting to get used to it, but I still need to go out and hunt because of the amount of animal blood in it isn't enough. I nodded at her explanation, and then she continued speaking. The Vampire Council obtains human blood from blood banks. There are humans who are willing to donate their blood to foundations because they know how it's for their benefit. We can't lose human blood from our diet, even if it's just a small percentage. We just need it to keep going. I looked at her until everything she said sank into my brain. It's hard for us to start living this kind of lifestyle, but this is the order of our superiors, so we can't do anything but obey. If we want to study here in Sinclaire Academy, we must agree to be subjects of experiments regarding the blood diet. Viet added, Vampires sacrifice a lot, especially those who studied here in Sinclaire Academy. I wonder what the outcome of the Vampire Council experiment would be regarding the blood diet. It would certainly benefit humans more than vampires. Vampires have been practicing the blood diet for a long time now. It was banned due to the belief that vampires are said to be weakening because of it, but 5 years ago, the high-ranking vampires decided to bring it back to Sinclaire Academy as their chosen testing site. It's been quite a while since they brought back the blood diet, but it's not that easy for my body to adjust to the different blood type. It's like our body has its own mind. It knows what it should and should not want. I frowned when I thought about something suddenly. What about those vampires who are not under a blood diet? What are they drinking? Some drink fresh animal blood, but others prefer human blood from blood banks and foundations. Before, a small percentage of the high-ranking vampires also practiced in drinking the blood of other vampires, but now it's looked down upon and highly discouraged. But others still can't avoid killing humans for themselves, I said softly. She nodded. Yeah, some vampires get out of control when they don't, and the bloodlust needs to be handled. How does it feel to be injected with the blood dosage? I looked at Viet's face after I asked that, because I'm not sure if my question was offensive to her kind. She gave me a dry smile. I don't feel hungry, but I don't feel full either. How are they? I asked and glanced at the fearsome four. Viet shrugged. I don't know, but there are rumors that say they are under the blood diet. I'm not surprised. They seem special? I was going to say powerful, but that works too. Viet chuckled before clapping her hands. Sir Yuan's out today, so we have a free period later. Good luck, Phil commented. Why? I asked. Viet shrugged. Someone just announced the reason. Phil groaned. You guys are good, he said, annoyed. It looks like someone is too lazy to study. But Phil left us after lunch hour. As he walked away from us, he grumbled about how it's unfair that we got a free period while he was stuck in class. Where are we going? I asked Viet as we walked down the hallway. I'm in the study hall. I still have an assignment to finish. You? I'll just follow you. I'll just go to my locker. Do I need to put a tracking device on you? You might get lost again. She teased. What? No, I've been here for a month. No, absolutely not. How many times have you lost your way? She asked, grinning. Is it my fault that this academy is so big? Yeah, leave me alone and go do your homework. I pushed her away, but she didn't leave immediately. She teased me a few more times before she finally left me alone. When Viet left, I walked to my locker. I hummed the theme of a popular children's show as I walked. Because I miss Canada. How is he? It's been a month since I moved out of our house to live in the dorm, and I still haven't been back there once. Mother told me not to go home until I get used to living in Sinclaire Academy. Now that I'm a bit comfortable here, I think I can stay at our house on weekends. I'm sure Mother misses me, even though she doesn't say anything anytime I call. How childish. Shit! I jumped and clutched my chest when I heard a familiar voice speak. I was stunned when I saw New Zealand and Russia standing near me. She was holding him by the neck as she pulled him like a child. She was also approaching me. Hi, May! New Zealand greeted me. There was a huge grin on her face. Hello? I greeted her in confusion. What are they planning to do? Should I start running away from them now? New Zealand elbowed Russia, so he glared at her. Hi. Russia grumbled. I raised my eyebrows. Russia wants to apologize for the stupid thing he did, New Zealand said. It's not my fault he wasn't looking where he was going. Well, it's not his fault that you lost control, New Zealand retorted, before sighing. You're here to apologize, not blame him, remember? We talked about it. Silence enveloped the surroundings, and I looked back and forth at the two of them. New Zealand crossed her arms and glared at Russia. She looked like she was ready to pounce on him at any moment now. I didn't know if I should be scared or laugh at both of them. What, aren't you going to talk? She asked him. Sorry. Excuse me? I said, and then brought my ear closer to him. Sorry. He gritted out. Huh? He looked at me again. Sorry. He gritted out again. Excuse me, what did you just say? I said sorry! He screamed and glared daggers at me before walking away. When Russia left, New Zealand and I both laughed. Oh my gosh, I made the right decision to befriend you, she said. She was laughing out loud while clapping. I smiled. I don't know what came into my mind to do that to Russia. I just wanted to know if it was true, what Viet said earlier, that he doesn't know how to show emotions. I didn't expect him to get bored so quickly. I have to give you a medal, New Zealand said when she was done laughing. What for? You're the only one who has made him scream like that. What? Russia doesn't speak often. There's a blockage in his throat, but when he does speak, the person he's talking to is sure to be annoyed by what he has to say. I just shook my head, because I don't know if I should answer what she said. Do you need anything else? I'm going to my locker. Come on! I waited so long to talk to you again, and then you're just going to drive me away? It's not... I'm just kidding, she said while smiling. But really, I want to talk to you. You have really got my attention, United States of America. Is that a good thing? I asked. She only answered me with laughter. I looked at her carefully and noticed that her eyes were hazel brown and her face was very smooth. It's as if the pimples that have grown there are shameful. Is it your free period? She asked. Then she started walking. I followed her. Yes, I answered. You don't have class? I have, but I decided to skip it because I knew you'd be here. How did you know? She shrugged. I can see the future, but only a glimpse of it. And I can also sometimes locate a human or vampire once I have touched them. You have superpowers? We call them abilities, America, not superpowers. That's too mainstream, she said, laughing at my ignorance. How? Remember that time Australia and I rescued you from Russia? I touched your forehead then. I racked my brain to remember that day. It took a few seconds, but I remembered too. She did touch my forehead then. That's how my ability works. Once I've touched you, I can find out where you are most of the time. But don't worry, I don't always use my ability. I value privacy. What about the glimpse of the future thing? She shrugged. Sometimes I get visions of the future, but only glimpses. The images I see are not clear yet because I haven't mastered that ability. I'm still confused. You'll understand it someday. She looked at me as we walked. I noticed you're not too familiar with vampires, are you? So I've been told, I said sarcastically. What gave it away? Is it that I called your abilities superpowers, or when I asked too many questions? None of those things. Huh? What? She looked at me, and I saw a smile form on her lips. The first time I talked to you, you treated me like a normal student. You weren't afraid of me. I wasn't scared of her when we first met. I was more afraid of Russia then. I noticed that New Zealand was walking out of the building, but I continued to follow her. You see, most of the students here get scared when I talk to them, she said. Why? You seem really nice. Wow, you really don't know anything about vampires. I'm sorry. I scratched the back of my neck nervously. 'Cause we just moved here to Hangrove, and the vampire population where I used to live is very small, so I'm not familiar with people like you. I can follow what you say anyway, though. Something you still don't understand? I nodded. Come on, I have something to show you. I know you haven't been there yet, she suddenly said, and then grabbed my hand. I couldn't do anything but stand by her while she pulled me somewhere. We ran to the back of Building B. I have never been to this part of the academy before. There are so many tall trees and dead ones. The grass here glows with the window's tint. We stopped in front of a gate. It was a very high gate. I looked up at it and saw the Sinclaire Academy crest at the top. I glanced at the other gate and gasped when I saw where we were. Why is there a cemetery here? America, welcome to Sinclair Cemetery, she dramatically said, and then extended her hand to the gate as if she were paying homage to it. From where we were standing, I noticed some of the dead grass on the other side of the gate, and various kinds of statues scattered there. I was suddenly terrified. It looks like a cemetery has been here for a long time. Who in their right mind would put a cemetery inside of a school? What are we going to do here? I stuttered. You know very little about us, don't you? Then I'm going to teach you, she said before smiling and clapping her hands together. An excited glint appeared in her eyes. What? The best way to learn about vampires is by asking one, of course. She winked at me and then pulled me inside of the cemetery. Don't worry, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about vampires. New Zealand, can we go back? I don't want to be here anymore, I persisted while New Zealand pulled me into the cemetery. We're almost there, she replied. She didn't even look at me. I looked at the gate of the cemetery and saw that we were getting further and further away from it. Where are we going? It just is... I step on dry leaves and hear the sound of branches falling from the trees as we walk. I was terrified every time we passed a tombstone, so I avoided looking at them. This place is creeping me out. Why is there a cemetery here? We finally stopped walking when we reached a clearing. There was no tombstone in sight in this part of the cemetery. New Zealand sat under a huge tree, then patted the spot next to her. You should sit, she said to me. I hesitated to go to her side, but I did it anyway. I just made sure that there was a safe distance between the two of us. I have another class. Maybe... Don't worry. You won't do anything important in that class. Besides, Russia's your classmate in that subject, right? If I were you, I'd stay away from him for a while. Let him cool down first. His head is still too hot. Why me? New Zealand was the one who made him apologize in the first place. It's okay to go without an apology. Is he going to attack me? Oh God, no. He's just annoyed with you, so don't show yourself to him yet. You two seem pretty close, I said while staring at nothing in particular. I really don't know how to talk to her. Of course we are. We're family. Are you guys related? Not really. Our family is close to each other and we grew up together, so we consider each other as family. She shrugged before leaning against the trunk of a tree behind us. So, where do you want to start? In the beginning? I'm not sure of the answer. She bowed and seemed to think. Do you know what vampires rank in the pyramid? I know some things about it, I answered shyly. She turned away. Where did you live then? Why are people like us banned from you? She teased. I smiled slightly at that response. Let's go into details. I focused my attention on her and listened carefully. Vampires are ranked into 4 categories based on our bloodline. The most powerful vampires belong on the top of the pyramid. They are called purebloods, or royals. Even though our form of government is not monarchy, they are technically royalty. They are the most important type of vampires because of the vampire race starting with them. They used to run the world before humans and other creatures were given equal rights, and the world was divided by territory. They're called purebloods because their blood is not mixed with other races. Vampires are immortal, and we can stop aging whenever we want to. So you can't estimate our age with just a glance. But there are some purebloods who opt to grow old and die because they believe there is nothing left in the world for them. She explained further. Purebloods' abilities are very powerful, but they only use it when they really need to because it attracts rogue vampires and other creatures. I nodded to New Zealand to gesture that I understood what she was saying, and then she continued to explain. The Vampire Council treats the purebloods as their main priority. They are sacred treasures. It is forbidden to defy them, and it's against the law to kill or even harm them. The punishment is heavy if you are caught hurting one of them. You should never mess with purebloods because you don't know what the consequences will be. What will the consequences of this be? I was stunned by what she said. Note to self, never mess with purebloods. She laughed a little at my reaction, then continued to speak. The second level of the pyramid is composed of the elites. Australia, Poland, and I belong to this group, she said, then smiled. We are powerful too, but not as powerful as purebloods. Our abilities are much more limited compared to them, and we have to obey them at all costs. Really? She nodded. In case you don't know yet, Australia and Poland are our cousins. The Diornitis and the Woodson are 2 of the most powerful clans of elite. The representatives from both of our clans make up the council elders. They, along with the representatives of purebloods, are considered high-ranking officials in the Vampire Council. But there are many more elites in the Vampire Council compared to purebloods because our population is larger than theirs. Why is the population of purebloods less compared to elites? If they're the most powerful, shouldn't they be more? Purebloods are only about 20% of the vampire population, and they are scattered in different parts of the world. There are only a few of them now, because there was a crisis then. It was revealed what happens when someone gets a hold of pureblood's blood, so there was a killing spree, and so many of their kinds lost their lives. New Zealand then continued speaking. For some reason, she looked annoyed. If you ask me, killing purebloods for blood was pointless because their blood is not easy to handle. Aren't they scary? Not really, she said before smiling wickedly. It was as if she knew something that I didn't. Suddenly, I was nervous. You should know that families of purebloods and elites are also individually ranked. How's that? You mean families are not equal to each other at each level of the pyramid? I asked. Yes, our family, for example, is the top family of the elites. We are next in line to the lowest ranking family of purebloods. So your family is very powerful then? She nodded. Yes. Now, do you understand why other students are scared to talk to me? They know that they shouldn't mess with my family and my abilities, she said. Speaking of abilities, there's a difference in the elite's abilities. You know that my abilities are already, but you should also know that Australia, my twin brother, is an empath and Poland has telekinesis. Now I know why there's 3 of them that stood so high and mighty. They have power that they can back up with confidence. I know what telekinesis is, but what is empath? An empath is someone with the ability to sense someone else's feelings. Australia can easily identify what you feel with just one touch and adapt to it. So right now, I'm telling you, do not touch my brother. There's more to his power than sensing emotions. I nodded quickly. Note to self, don't let Australia Woodson touch you. You're so powerful, that's why everyone looks up to you. She laughed softly. But it's not that easy to be one of the elites, America. After a few moments, she spoke again. Common vampires, also known as average vampires, belong to the 3rd level of the pyramid. They have no special abilities. They only have normal vampire traits. They are faster and stronger than the average human, and they also tend to heal faster. They have the largest vampire population. They outnumber the purebloods and the elites, but we are still more powerful than them. Are common vampire families individually ranked too? She shook her head. Nope, they're all equal. I just nodded again. The last level of vampires' pyramids is composed of rogues. Compared to us, they have a different physical appearance. Their skin is paler and their fangs are much longer. Their pupils are dark reds and the veins under their eyes are, well, they are considered a disgrace to the vampire race because they kill humans for their blood. Their strength is based on the amount of blood they drank, she explained. Like purebloods, rogues are also very dangerous. They are vampires that have gone mad. Bloodlust makes them crave human blood, even vampire blood. They usually target humans and common vampires because they are the easiest to catch, but purebloods are still their number 1 target. I kind of feel sorry for them because it's not easy to live when you feel the bloodlust every day, but what they do is still wrong. I've heard of rogues before. As far as I know, a few of them are scattered here in Hangrove, and that's not surprising because Hangrove is known for having the biggest vampire population in the country, and it's expected that there are types of vampires living here. Their uncontrollable thirst for blood is the reason why the Vampire Hunters Association was formed. They are my kind's answer to the problems that rogues have caused. New Zealand looked at me. That's everything you should know about the ranking of vampires in the pyramid. Do you have any questions? I shook my head, even though what she had said hadn't sunk into my brain yet, and I was still a bit confused about some things. I was overwhelmed by the breadth of vampire society, but at least now I know something about the ranking of vampires in the pyramid. That's a start. Well, let's head back then. New Zealand stood up. The breeze was clear today, and I thought it would be nice to stay here for a while longer. I glanced at New Zealand. It's exciting to think that I am talking to a member of the most powerful family that belongs to the elites. But suddenly, I thought of something. New Zealand, I have a question. She looked at me and raised an eyebrow. What is it? If you, Australia, and Poland are elites, what about Russia? She smirked. I thought you'd never ask. If your families are close, that means he's also a high-ranking vampire, right? He's a high-ranking vampire, all right, she said. Her eyes were suddenly filled with mischief. In fact, Russia has the highest ranking of all of us. What do you mean? She leaned over to me and whispered something in my ear. Russia Sinclaire is a pureblood. Chapter 5. America's point of view. What happened to him? You're annoying. I said I didn't know. I woke up when I heard familiar voices. I opened my eyes and I saw Phil standing at the end of my bed while Viet's face was hovering over my head. She backed away when she saw I was awake. I was looking all over the academy for you. And then you were just sleeping here, in your dorm room, Viet exclaimed. By now, I'm used to her presence in my room with Phil, because she is here to hang out so often. Because vampires aren't forbidden in dusk. Phil approached me and then touched my forehead. You don't have a fever. What happened to you? Before I could answer his question, Viet suddenly winced. You smell like grass. Suddenly, I felt self-conscious. I got up and sat on the edge of my bed and looked at them. Couldn't I just be sleepy, so I thought I'd take a nap? I'm lying. I don't know what to answer because I have no idea how I got here. The last thing I remember, I was talking to New Zealand in the cemetery this afternoon. We were about to have dinner, but we can't leave you here alone, Phil said. Dinner? That means it's night. It's been a while since I fell asleep. And since you're awake, let's go, said Viet, to which I just nodded. We left dusk and headed to the dining hall. I hugged myself as we walked because of the cold. It's usually cold here in Sinclaire Academy, even in the morning, because it's located up north. When we entered the dining hall, Phil and I immediately took our food and sat in our usual spot for the three of us. Viet was babbling, but I couldn't follow her story because my eyes trailed off while she was talking and landed on the fearsome four. I saw them complete there. New Zealand was busy on her phone while Poland was talking and Australia was listening to her. Russia, on the other hand, looked bored. I returned my attention to my food. I wanted to know what happened earlier, but I couldn't talk to New Zealand right now. I don't have the courage to go to their table and ask for her, so I have to wait until she's alone. Viet stopped talking when an alarm rang on her phone that landed on the table. When she heard this, she took out the syringe from the stainless steel box she was carrying and injected it into her skin. But I looked away while she did this. After I ate, I turned back to the fearsome four's table. I saw New Zealand stand up and walk straight out of the dining hall. Australia's gaze followed, but he didn't follow her. That means New Zealand was outside alone, and I could talk to her now. I immediately stood up from my seat and turned to the double doors of the dining hall. Where are you going? Phil asked when he saw what I did. I need to pee. Why are you leaving the dining hall? There's a comfort room here. I'll just use the one in the science wing, because my bladder is picky, I answered, and then hurriedly left so he wouldn't be able to ask any more questions. After I left the dining hall, I immediately looked for New Zealand. I saw her at the end of the hallway, so I ran there while calling her. New Zealand! New Zealand looked back. She looked at me and raised an eyebrow. She didn't look surprised to see me. You ran so close, but you gasped immediately, she commented when I got in front of her. I glared at her. Is it my fault that I'm too lazy to exercise and would rather just lie in bed? Excuse me, I'm not as strong as people like you. She rolled her eyes at me. Obviously, what do you need? Before I could finish what I was saying, she covered my mouth with her finger and then smiled widely. I already know, come on. We walked to the open field and went to one of the wooden tables there. It was dark around, so the only lamppost gave us light. I hugged myself again because it was cold out here. New Zealand sat on one of the wooden chairs and placed her elbow on top of the table that was in front of us. What do you think of my cousin? Why do you ask? What's wrong with Poland? She didn't speak, she just shrugged. I took a deep breath before answering her. I feel like you're cousins, that you would be close, but there seems like there's a gap between you every time I see you. There's no point in lying to her. She pursed her lower lip. It's not like I hate her. It's more like she hates me. When I watch you every time you're together, it's not obvious that you don't get along. It's just that you're not really close. Are you watching us? I scratched my head. Sometimes, I answered. Poland doesn't like competition, but she thinks I am, so... She sighed. She's making it clear that she doesn't like you. Poland and I had a good relationship when we were kids, but when we became teenagers, she changed. Before we entered high school, she told me that she was tired of living in my shadow. After all, we get the same attention. She's just too blind to see it. They said you two are considered the queens of Sinclaire Academy. You've established your reputation before even coming to Sinclaire Academy. New Zealand chuckled. You heard about that, huh? Seems like we got your attention early on, America. I shrugged. I got curious. New Zealand let out a deep breath. It was as if she was taking something off her chest. I didn't ask about the relationship with Poland because I didn't want to cross the line. Maybe she just wanted to tell something, so she told me tonight. I may not be the perfect person for that, but I'll gladly listen to her again. Enough about me, New Zealand said. We came here because you have a question, so shoot. What happened earlier? You fainted. Huh? She smirked. You fainted after I told you something about Russia. I tried to remember what happened earlier. New Zealand told me that Russia is a pureblood, and... Oh, packing tape. I fainted because I realized I pissed off a pureblood. Congrats, girl. You managed to single-handedly piss off a pureblood. New Zealand exclaimed before shaking my shoulders. The tone of her voice made it seem like I deserved celebration for pissing off Russia Sinclaire. I resisted the urge to glare daggers at her. I lightly banged my head on the table in front of us to express my frustration. Is Russia still annoyed at me? I didn't know he was pureblood when I made fun of him. If only I had known, I wouldn't have done that. In fairness, when I whispered to you, you immediately passed out. New Zealand! I exclaimed. I am so freaking dead right now. Should I tell Mom that I'm about to die, or can I arrange the requirements immediately so that I can transfer to another school as soon as possible? I'll be packing when I get back to the dorm. Wait, speaking of the dorm, are you the one who brought me to my dorm? No. Then who was it? Russia carried you. She casually answered. The who carried the what? It's hard to talk to you, she grumbled. I said Russia carried you. I took a breath and looked away from her. Are my ears deceiving me? What New Zealand said could not be true. Russia Sinclaire would not do that. You're probably thinking that can't be true, but let me explain what happened, New Zealand said. She clapped her hands before speaking again. Russia happened to pass by while I was in the middle of laughing my ass off. Of course New Zealand would laugh before helping me. That was expected. She still laughs while telling me the story now. He saw me and asked why I was annoying the human boy laying on the ground. I didn't answer him. Instead, I ordered him to carry you back to your dorm. He hesitated, so I hit him on the head to make him follow me. I couldn't just leave you there. I will let Russia calling me annoying human boy pass because he carried me back to the dorm. But dang, I am so behind on Russia. Didn't you say that everyone, including elites, must respect the purebloods and that it's against the law to hurt them? Isn't Russia one of the purebloods, so why did you attack him? I asked, in surprise. Like the law could stop me. Russia and I practically grew up together. I even saw him butt naked when we were 7 years old. A hit on the head wouldn't make any difference. And trust me, I already did far worse things to him than that. The story about New Zealand seeing Russia naked was too much information, so I did not react to it. But what she said made me realize that they were a lot closer than I thought. You seem to order him around a lot, I said. I remembered how New Zealand forced Russia to apologize while holding his neck. Russia doesn't like being ordered around because he's a pureblood and he has a whole army of servants that do everything he asks them to. So he only obeys me or his parents. You seem special to him. I couldn't help but say. Russia doesn't look like the type of guy who just obeys anyone's wishes. New Zealand must be important to him, for him to obey her like that, no matter how absurd her requests are. She smiled. I guess I am. I envy her, but not in a malicious way. I was jealous of the friendship she has with Russia, because I miss having a similar relationship to theirs. I miss having someone who has my back and would treat me like family. I had a best friend once too, but he was in a place far from me now. There's more to that story, but now is not the time for drama. I let the fact that Russia Sinclaire carried me from the cemetery to my dorm in dusk sink in my head. Life is too cruel. New Zealand and I stayed outside for a while and got to know each other. In my opinion, it was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't care if she's high-ranking vampire or not. I will treat her the same way I treat other people. She made it clear to me that she doesn't like being treated differently because of her family's rank. After an hour and a half, we decided to call it a night. We could go there after lunch and stop by at that little cafe. Phil stopped talking when I entered our dorm room. He was sitting on his study table while using his laptop, while Viet was sitting on the bed. It took you a while to pee. Do you have your water tank filled? Viet opened her eyes to me. I didn't pay attention to what she said. I just looked at her. And then I took off my shoes and sat on my bed. Why are you still here? It's getting late. Phil looked at me. We should ask you that. Where have you been? Where did you go? Where did you come from? I smiled at them. Don't ignore me. Let's just go back to what you were talking about earlier. Where are you going? Correction. Where are we going? Viet said, pointing to me and Phil. We're going shopping tomorrow at Town Square. Phil added. Shopping for what? I scrunched up my nose. Shopping isn't really my thing. I have enough clothes already. Dresses! Viet exclaimed. She was excited. Huh? Viet rolled her eyes at me. Seriously, that's becoming your catchphrase. We'll go shopping for dresses for the ball this Sunday, Phil said. He is still good, informative. What ball? I asked in surprise. Don't tell me you didn't know there was a ball on Sunday, Viet asked in disbelief. There are tons of announcements posted on the bulletin board about that. I bit my lower lip. Am I ignorant? Why didn't I notice that? So, as I was saying, we're going to go to Town Square tomorrow to shop for dresses and check out this cute little cafe at Versailles Street, Phil said. Then he returned to his laptop. Viet laid on Phil's bed. Hey, Amay, don't be an idiot there. What? Are you coming or not? Like I have a choice, I answered. I guess staying isn't an option this weekend. Is there a theme in the ball? It's a masquerade ball this year, Viet answered. So we also need to buy a mask? Yep, answered Viet. According to the rumors, we're going to play another game this year. Phil looked at me to explain what he meant. We went treasure hunting last year. Trust me, it wasn't fun looking for a treasure while wearing floor-length clothes. A game? What kind of game? She shrugged. Beats me. It's one of the rumors going around today, along with New Zealand having a new friend. New Zealand has a new friend? I asked, hiding my discomfort. This new friend could be anyone, not just me. For all I know, New Zealand could be going around and making new friends. New Zealand having a new friend? That's new, Viet asked, looking at the ceiling. When did that happen? This afternoon. A freshman said that she saw New Zealand laughing with someone in the hallway. They didn't say who it was, but it's a guy. Another student also saw them walking outside the building earlier. Yep, that's definitely me. I gulped. Who did they predict? Some fourth-year student who I forgot the name of. I was a third-year student, so they guessed it wrong. Why is it a big deal that New Zealand has a new friend? I asked. I wanted to know what they would answer, even though New Zealand already had told me why. 1, she's New Zealand. 2, she's freaking New Zealand. Viet answered using her fingers to count. Well, New Zealand seems to be an awesome person to hang out with. New Zealand is a... Before Viet could finish what she was saying, Phil covered Viet's mouth with his hands. I rolled my eyes at them. You don't have to stop her, I already know. Viet's eyes widened. You do? How did you know? Phil curiously asked. He knows that I don't have any friends here in Sinclaire Academy apart from the 2 of them, so no one else would give me information. So, you know what New Zealand's position is on the pyramid? I nodded. New Zealand's family belongs to the elites, and they're also the top-ranked clan in that position. And so what? Why does that stop other students from befriending her? Hello! She looks intimidating. Actually, their whole group looks intimidating, Viet exclaimed. New Zealand and Australia are labeled as the Terror Twins, because even though they look nice, if you do or say something wrong to them, they will use their family's influence to have you killed in an instant. Add Poland as the heartless telekinetic bitch, and Russia as the oh-so-hot introvert with personal issues. They're like 4 different storms that combined into one, Phil pointed out. They're the children of the highest-ranking vampires in the world. They are untouchable, Ame. They know where we're going. We show them respect by leaving them alone, Viet added. I couldn't blame them if they were afraid to approach the fearsome 4, but I hope they also think about how the 4 feel. New Zealand, for instance, wants to make friends, but she couldn't because everyone is afraid to approach her. Viet, what's your rank? I'm an average vampire. It's obvious. I already guessed that Viet's an average vampire, because I noticed that she doesn't wear luxury clothes that much, but she's still beautiful in her own way. So, we're getting settled tomorrow? Phil asked. I nodded before standing up to go to the bathroom. Guess I would finally get to explore Hangrove for the first time tomorrow. Chapter 6. America's point of view. On a beautiful Saturday, Phil drove his car out of the student parking lot and passed through Sinclaire Academy's private road. Viet sat in the passenger seat while I was in the back seat. Today would be my first day out of the academy since I started studying here, so I decided to wear my comfiest clothes, a simple t-shirt that had Netto written on it, and some comfy pants. Today will be my first time going to the town square as well. It's the main shopping district in Hangrove, and most of Sinclaire Academy students go there during the weekend. because I'm a homebody and I immediately entered the academy before I could even settle into our new home. I haven't been there yet. Before we left, I called my mother to say goodbye and that I was going shopping. She agreed, and as long as I buy things I need before I spend for snacks. Mom really spoils the plan sometimes. It just so happens that my 2-week stock of chocolates has run out. I turned to look out the window and watched what we were going through. Sinclaire Academy's private roads are wide. Mom and I almost got lost when she brought me here on the first day. I feel like it's nice to walk around here because there are so many trees and the air is so fresh. But that doesn't seem like a good idea. If I had done that, my feet would have fallen off before I even reached the end of the long road. It is said that this private road was made to hide Sinclaire Academy from the eyes of outsiders. It's also said that you can only see the academy when you're halfway down the road because it's covered by tall trees. Shall we go shopping first, or to the cafe that you mentioned? Viet asked Phil when we reached the main road. I suggest we go to the cafe first, then go shopping. We could go back to chill and buy pastries to take home. I answered. Phil told me earlier that the cafe we are going to makes the best cheesecake, and the thought of mouth-watering pastries was making me excited. I saw Phil smile in the rearview mirror. I agree, he exclaimed. I looked back at the window and admired the view outside, while Viet was busy with her phone and Phil was singing along to a song on the radio. My phone suddenly vibrated, indicating that I had a message. Queen Z stands for Queen Zealand. New Zealand put that name on my phone when she gave me her number the night we talked in the open field. My eyebrows furrowed as I read her message. I immediately sent her a reply. After a few minutes, my phone vibrated again, and New Zealand's reply blew me away. I didn't reply to her because I knew what she was saying. Don't doubt my choice, she said. I know I make unusual choices often. Sometimes I don't think about the decisions anymore. Was she talking about that? Thinking about what New Zealand meant, I didn't immediately realize that we were already in town square. My spirit woke up when Phil parked his car in front of the cafe called Na Patisserie. When we entered the cafe, I immediately smelled freshly baked pastries. Phil picked a spot near one of the glass windows for us to sit on. I can clearly see the view outside from here, and I could see people walking around in and out of stores, couples strolling together, and kids laughing. I found comfort while watching them because they looked so normal. Town Square looks like it belongs in a different era, because it has a vintage vibe. There were a few cars that pass here and there, because the roads were small. So it must be nice to walk around this place. What do you want, May? Phil asked. He was sitting across from me. What do you suggest? They serve awesome cheesecakes here, and their red velvet cakes are great too. I wanted to try their cheesecake, but I haven't had red velvet cake in a while. Should I just order red velvet cake, or maybe I should get both? But if we come back here later, I need to leave some space in my stomach. Why is it so hard to decide what to eat? Do we need to take you to court so you can make a proper decision? Phil joked. It must have been obvious that I was having a hard time deciding. Don't doubt your choice. New Zealand's words suddenly floated in my mind. Is that what she's referring to? Just cheesecake for me. Blueberry if you have it. Phil stood up and went to the counter to order. When he was gone, Viet suddenly spoke. I'm OP in your conversation, she said before letting out an awkward chuckle. By the way, you're not eating. I hope I'm like other vampires who can eat human food, she lamented while looking out the window. What do you mean? Most vampires go through a stage where their body decides if it wants human food or not. It's part of puberty. She inhaled deeply. When I was a kid, I could eat human food, but as I grew up, my body slowly rejected it and started preferring blood. So your body rejected human food? She nodded. A few years ago, my tongue developed a distaste for human food, and I started craving animal blood more. Whenever we would try to eat human food, I would puke. I was a total mess back then because my body was undergoing changes, so my mom advised me to stop eating human food and just live on animal blood alone. I started feeling better after doing that, she said. Some vampires are lucky because they just can have both human food and blood. Sadly, I'm not one of those. I looked at Viet with pity. It's obvious from her voice that she misses eating human food. I'm sure that if it happens to me, I'd lose it. It's so good to eat. But hearing those words from Viet made me realize that even though vampires are higher than us humans in the pyramid, not all of them have it easy. Could New Zealand be the same? I have never seen her eat, so I don't know. Whenever she was in the dining hall, she did nothing but sit her usual spot with her group. Maybe she just doesn't want to eat. A plate of blueberry cheesecake suddenly appeared in front of me. I looked up a little and saw that Phil had gotten it. He had a tray with only food. He placed a plate of strawberry cheesecake and a glass frappe in front of him, and then handed me another glass. I took it. I was about to take the blueberry cheesecake, but I felt awkward when I realized that Viet didn't have anything in front of her, and Phil and I have all of the sweet goodness. Knowing that she couldn't even eat it if she wanted to made me feel sad. Phil placed a transparent cup filled with red liquid in front of Viet. "What's this?" Viet asked, while shaking the cup. "Was that blood?" Phil rolled his eyes. "Of the three of us, you are the most familiar with it." "I mean, what kind of blood is this?" "First year blood. It's your favorite. It's okay if you skip the blood doses now, right?" Phil smiled at her. "You look like a meowing cat over there." Viet squealed in happiness as she hugged Phil. "Thank you!" "You can only hug me for 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times up. Let go." Viet let go and happily drank the blood. I shook my head at them. I took a bite of the blueberry cheesecake and moaned shamelessly because of the sudden burst of flavor. Maybe this is what New Zealand meant earlier. I didn't doubt my choice, and it was definitely worth it. A dozen of stores, hundreds of fittings, and 2 numbing feet later, we finally found the perfect masks for the ball. I chose white because it was the safest color since I don't know what dress to buy. We bought the masks and went to a store called Mademoiselle. I hope we can find dresses here because I'm so tired. Everything I ate earlier is gone and I need to recharge now. The 3 of us split up as we entered the store. A few minutes later, I heard Viet squeal somewhere. I hope that means she found a dress she likes. I looked at the clothes display. I avoided dresses that looked too expensive and focused on what I could afford. I'm only going to use it for one night, so I don't want to spend a lot. "See anything you like, Bella?" I jumped when I suddenly heard a voice that came from behind me. Did someone just call me Bella? I turned to see who spoke, and the beautiful face of a woman, I think was in her mid-30s or even early 40s, opened up to me. "Is she a vampire?" "Oh, my name isn't Bella, it's America," I shyly told her. The lady laughed. "Bella means beautiful in Italian," she said. Oh, she's already praising my beauty. I didn't even know it yet. "I'm Italy, the owner of the store. I can help you pick a dress if you want." "No, don't stop. You might be busy." "Nonsense. Come on. I know a suit that suits you." I couldn't help it when Italy said that because she immediately pulled me to the cash register where she was. She left me in front of it and then entered a door. Seconds later, she came out holding a white box. She opened the box and handed me the suit. "Try this out," she said while grinning widely. Before my brain could even register what she handed me, she pushed me into a fitting room. I gathered my thoughts and looked at the dress that she gave me. It was a beautiful black vest with white sleeves and yellow tie. Lastly, black pants. I measured it, and I couldn't fix it because I couldn't even reach the vest in the back. As I was struggling, I heard a knock on the fitting room door. "May, you in there?" "Viet, help!" Viet entered the fitting room and helped me with the suit. We looked in the mirror together, and she lifted and put down the vest. "You're beautiful. I have a crush on you," Viet gushed as she looked me from head to toe. "We won't lose." She gave me a thumbs up. "Awesome choice, May." I took a good look at myself in the mirror. The suit fit me perfectly, and it emphasized my curves. I never knew I had, but wearing it made me feel uneasy because I was not used to wearing beautiful clothes like this. I left the fitting room feeling unsure. Don't doubt your choice. I just shook my head when I suddenly remembered New Zealand's text message. I don't know why that popped into my brain now. Italy clapped her hands with delight when she saw me. "You look beautiful." "Nice," Phil commented. He was carrying paper bags. I guess that means he and Viet had already bought their dress. "Are you okay?" I asked. I normally avoid black vests, but this will do. It would be a shame if I were to object, especially since the owner of the store had already chosen it for me. "Don't worry, Bella. You look beautiful." Phil and Viet waited outside while I took off the dress and paid for it. Before I could ask Italy how much it was, she was ahead of me. "It's free," she said, while handing me the paper bag that contained the neatly folded dress. There was a big smile on her face. "Really? Are you serious?" I asked, shocked. "Do they really give out free clothes here in Hangrove? Is this normal, or is this a prank?" The suit looked so beautiful and expensive, so why would Italy just give it to free for someone she doesn't even know? "Yes, I'm serious. I've been looking for a man to match that suit for a long time. Every time someone comes into the store, I check to see if they have the traits I'm looking for to own that dress. And no, I'm disappointed every time, and I realize it's not there. But when I saw you walk in the door earlier, I knew right away that that dress meant to belong to you." "Why? What's so special about this dress?" I wanted to ask her if the dress was cursed, but that would be rude, so I stopped myself. "It's the first dress I ever made." "I'm sorry, but I can't accept it." I pushed the paper bag back to her. I couldn't just take something so important to her. I still have time to find another dress. "Take it, May. It would be a great honor for me to have one of my creations worn by you," she said, and then pushed the paper bag back at me. Why does she want me to take such a nice suit? What's so special about me? "I can't." "I'm serious. Take it," Italy said, and then she held both of my hands and placed the paper bag handle in one. "Now, go before your friends wonder what's taking you so long." "Thank you." I sincerely bowed at her before leaving because I couldn't think of any other way to express my gratitude to her. I smiled at her, and then I left the store. As I was walking towards Viet and Phil's place, something suddenly came to my mind. What if New Zealand was talking about the dress, and not the cheesecake in her text message? What will I gain by wearing this dress? Chapter 7. Tonight is the masquerade ball. Viet insisted on doing my makeup because she claimed she's an expert. She also said that if she does my makeup, I can save money, unlike our other classmates who hire stylists just for the event. I didn't do anything to stop her, so she just turned me into a doll without anything else. Phil just kept laughing as he watched Viet turn my face into a coloring book. I made Viet leave my hair alone, though, because I didn't want to put any products in it, so I could just go straight to sleep after the event. I combed it properly to make it look presentable. I put on the dress and looked at myself in the dorm's mirror. No matter how beautiful it is, I still felt uncomfortable wearing it because I got it for free. I even spent hours the previous night wondering why someone would just give away one of their precious creations for free. I looked up at the reflection of my face on the mirror, and I must say, Viet did a pretty good job on my face. You really look beautiful. I might really have a crush on you. Viet keeps gushing on how I look tonight. She's been repeatedly telling me that she has a crush on me. It's ugly. We're not losers. You're beautiful. I'm not. So we're not a good match. I answered with a laugh, and then I took the mask and put it on properly. What game do you think they're planning to play? Viet asked as she fixed herself one last time. You know, we're really not going to play a game, Phil answered her. You know, there's an 80% chance that the rumors saying the fearsome four are involved in planning are true. I just hope that they didn't plan anything too wicked. Maybe we're going on a treasure hunt again this year. In floor-length clothes again? Just be aware of it. I just shook my head at them. Rumors spread really easily here, especially if it involves high-ranking vampire students. It was the source of their entertainment here, and, in fairness, there's always something every week. You get used to it. It was confirmed earlier we will play a game, I said softly. I really had no intention of telling them what I know, but as I was listening to their conversation, I was tempted to laugh because of how clueless they sounded. They looked at me at the same time. How did you know? They asked in unison. I heard the other students talking in the hallway earlier. I lied. I even shrugged to make it seem like I know nothing important. The truth is, I learned about the game from New Zealand. She's the one who planned it. New Zealand and I got a chance to talk earlier. She told me about the balls. It can get boring, so she decided to spice things up by organizing a game every student could play. She said she included Russia in saying goodbye to the other superiors so that the teachers could easily allow him. I asked her what game she was planning. She didn't want to tell me what it was because she said she wanted it to be a surprise. I can't forget that goofy smile on her face when she said that. So I'm a little nervous now. Since we're friends, she might trip me in the game. Is there a free dance? Phil wondered as we walked to the venue for the ball. Of course, there is that. It is usually the highlight of the night, apart from the game, you know. Someone might dance with a May, Viet teased while looking at me. I shook my head. I doubt it. Apart from the two of them and New Zealand, no other students have talked to me. We walked on a cemented path surrounded by the trees adorned with twinkling lights. I smiled when I saw it because of its beauty. We had students walking together. It was hard to tell who was who among them. Were humans and which ones were vampires because of the masks they were wearing. Some of them were wearing full face masks while others were wearing half masks like mine. Many of them are still hanging outside the grand hall. The girls are giggling and gushing about their dresses while the boys stood in groups and chatted with each other. We immediately went inside to get a good table. We haven't been sitting for very long yet, and Viet can't get enough of looking around everywhere. Hey, you're gonna break your neck there, Phil scolded her. What are you looking for? There's nothing, she answered nonchalantly, but she was still looking everywhere. She was obviously lying. I just laughed at Viet. She and Phil kept their voices as low as they talked, so I just listened to them. By the way, I brought my phone because I'm bored now. The room suddenly became quiet and everyone's gaze went straight to the double-door entrance. I imitated them because I saw the reason why everyone was quiet. The fearsome four entered flawlessly, leaving everyone in awe. I felt intimidated as I saw them walk in. New Zealand and Poland led the group as they made their way to the stage, while Australia and Russia followed behind like protective hawks. Australia playfully smirked as he walked, probably because he was aware a lot of girls were checking him out, while Russia looked his usual expressionless self. The four of them stood on the stage in front of everyone. Everyone's attention was on them, and no one dared to make any noise. New Zealand came closer to the mic stand. Then she smirked and held her chin before speaking. I heard everyone has been wondering what game we will be playing this evening. I bet that there's only one thing you're looking forward to tonight, she said confidently. There was no introduction speech, but she was right. Everyone was indeed looking forward to the game. Well, for tonight's game, we will be using the Academy grounds to play, and you will not be allowed to go inside of any of the buildings because that would be unfair. Whispers started to erupt from the students. I looked around and noticed most of the students were excited, but there were some who also seemed scared. New Zealand lifted her hand to command everyone to be quiet. Of course, everyone followed her. We're going to play hide and seek, she happily said. Hide and seek with the entire student body. That doesn't sound like an easy game to play, especially if you are the seeker. I have played that game with my little brother at home. Our house is small, but I am having a hard time looking for him. And what if you want to search the whole academy? I saw a wicked glint form in New Zealand's eyes, and my heart started beating fast for some reason. So this is how we're going to play. Australia suddenly spoke. Everyone's attention shifted to him. To spice things up, we've decided that the four of us are going to be the seekers. A wicked glint, similar to New Zealand's, formed in his eyes. That sent chills down my spine. Only they will search? Phil asked in confusion. Australia continued his speech. I suggest you hide in the best place you can think of. Remember, the dorms and other buildings are off limits. Once we find you, you have to return here to the Grand Hall. The last student found will receive a prize from us. The prize will depend on the seeker who found you. He grinned as his eyes shone with mischief. Easy, right? The game sounded fun, but I was not interested in hide and seek. I was not the best at hide and seek, and whenever my brother and I played it, I knew there was no way I could win the game. So I'll just look for a quiet place where I could have peace and silence until the seeker finds me. We're giving you a 5-minute head start. Your time starts now. It was like a tornado passed around me after Australia said that, because all the students ran out of the hall, and I couldn't run immediately because of the panic. So I was the last one to get out. Phil and Viet had already left me. I blew the hair on my face out when I made it outside. Where do I hide now? I want to go to a place where I know I can easily be found, so I can get back inside the Grand Hall right away. But I know New Zealand will be mad at me if I don't put effort into her game. I wanted to groan out loud out of frustration. I've only got 3 minutes left to find a hiding place, and all of the good ones were probably taken by now. Whatever. I took my mask off and then ran to whatever my feet took me to. I stopped when I realized it was so quiet around me. I looked around and noticed that I was in front of the Sinclaire Academy cemetery. I walked inside the cemetery, and I was shivering every time the wind blew in my direction. Is it extra cold tonight, or is it really colder in this part of the academy? If I had known that New Zealand had planned a hide-and-seek game through the whole academy, I would have brought a jacket. I let out a sigh of relief when I reached the clearing where New Zealand took me before. It was not exactly a hiding spot, but it could be. I can sit here and relax. I also walked quite a distance to get here, so I'm tired now. I hope this game ends soon. And I don't know to whom this game is more unfair. The 4 seekers or the students who have to hide. Even though there are only 4 of them, the seekers still have advantage because of their ability. Poland could lift anything anyone was using, while using telekinesis, while New Zealand could easily locate the hiding spot of anyone she had touched before. Australia and Russia cannot be underestimated either, because they seem powerful too. I haven't known New Zealand that long, but based on what I know about her, I was sure that she wouldn't start with something She or her team couldn't win. They are definitely going to find us all. I was about to sit on the ground when the wind suddenly picked up, and I felt something fall from the height of a tree behind me. Before I could react, a hand suddenly cupped my mouth, preventing me from screaming, while another held my waist. "Found you," I heard Russia Sinclaire whisper into my ear. My brain short-circuited when I realized that he was behind me and his face was very close to my neck. Holy shit, Russia Sinclaire is holding me. "You shouldn't be alone in a cemetery at night, human," he said before releasing his grasp. I caught my breath and faced him when he released me. When I saw his face, I realized I wish I hadn't done that and had run away from him. Russia wasn't wearing a mask, so his perfect face was exposed. The moonlight illuminated half of it, while the rest was hidden behind in the shadows. There was no emotion on his face, as usual, but for some reason, he was staring intently at me. Seeing him up close was making me feel something I couldn't explain. Maybe it was amazement, because I couldn't have believed he looked so perfect. We are less than a meter apart, so I can clearly see why a lot of girls fawn over him. He's very good-looking indeed. Aside from the feeling that I couldn't explain, I couldn't help but feel scared too. It's only natural, because I was like prey right now, facing my predator as he intently gazed at me. Why? Is it because creatures like you usually are working out here at night, vampire? I managed to swallow my fear and looked at him straight in the eyes, but still, I could feel the panic kicking in my system. Deep breaths, America, deep breaths. I noticed his jaw hardened. Holy frack, America, stop talking. You're gonna rile him up again. You should never piss off purebloods, remember? You are not exactly the safest place right now, so you better shut up if you want to see the daylight again. You're afraid of me, he stated in a voice that was so low he was barely audible, then took a step forward. I automatically took a step back and nervously uttered a threat. But don't come any closer, I'm going to stab you with my hard shoes. Threatening a member of Pureblood was probably not a good idea, but for some reason it seemed to have worked on him. He stopped walking towards me, and the usual impassive look on his face was replaced with amusement. You're wearing sneakers. Oh, frack. How did he know? I lifted my long pants and looked at my sneakers. I was wearing. Why can't it magically change into hard shoes now? I cannot figure out how that's supposed to be a threat. So, come up with some better threat and just pretend I said it. Another threat, America. Oh gosh, please stop. Do you think that will hurt me? Russia rolled his eyes at me. I was confused by his reaction. I couldn't tell if he was serious or joking. I also couldn't tell if he was already irritated with me or planning to attack me again. Yet, I couldn't stop myself from throwing pointless threats at him. Why can't I control my brain and my mouth? This is frustrating. I closed my eyes when the wind picked up again, and I opened them, and I saw that Russia was no longer in front of me, and he was sitting under a tree. He stole my spot! I am not going to hurt you again. He sighed and glanced at me. His face no longer held a scary gaze. He looked kind of calm now. How can I be sure? I stuttered. He casually leaned his head back on the trunk of the tree and answered me bluntly. If I drink your blood now, its smell would mix with the air, and the whole academy would know that the human has been bitten. I'd rather not ruin my night with that kind of trouble. His answer seemed good enough. At least I have his word that he wouldn't hurt me tonight. I slowly walked towards him and sat a few steps away from him, making sure that there's a safe distance between us. I'd bent my knees and pulled them close to my chest, then I looked at him and tilted my head. Isn't everyone playing hide and seek? You're a seeker. Shouldn't you be looking for someone hiding right now? It's just the stupid game that New Zealand wanted to play. He sighed before looking at me. I came here to get peace and silence. If you want to stay, that's fine. But shut up. I immediately looked away from him when he said that. I rested my chin on my knees and did what he said. I should head back to the Grand Hall now because those are the rules, but I don't feel like doing that. Nothing will happen if I go back there, and I'd rather stay here with Russia a while longer. I don't know how many hours have passed since Russia and I sat under the tree. I glanced at him for the umpteenth time and saw that he was still in the same position as earlier. He hasn't moved once, so I'm not sure if he's awake or not. He looked so peaceful. Well, I looked like a paranoid kid looking around because of fear. After a while, I was surprised when I heard a rustling sound. I looked to where it came from, and when I said that it was just the leaves being blown in the wind, I turned to see Russia. I automatically flinched when he suddenly opened his eyes. He stared at me for a long while. He didn't look mad, but I was still nervous. Maybe because it felt like he was closing his eyes earlier that I was looking at him again. Shame! You won. Huh? You won New Zealand's stupid game, he stated, followed by an exasperated sigh. Come on, that's not possible. I've been defeated for a while now because you found me, right? Yeah, but you didn't go back to the Grand Hall, and they found all the students except for you, so New Zealand thinks you're the winner. He scratched his head in annoyance before muttering something I wasn't able to hear properly. The only words I managed to catch were stupid and boy. How did you know what New Zealand was thinking right now? I know things. For instance, I know that you've been looking at me for a while now. He smiled smugly, and I was surprised when a pair of dimples appeared on his cheek. For some reason unknown to me, my cheeks warmed when I saw them. Russia stood up and offered his hand to me. I knew that it meant he wanted to help me stand up, but I didn't take it. I just stared at his hand because I couldn't believe what was happening. Russia Sinclaire is helping me? Someone wake me up from this dream. I kept looking at his hand and his face. I wasn't sure if I should take his hand or not. What if he and Australia have the same ability? Is it safe for me to touch him? He must have noticed I was hesitant to accept his hand, so he took it back and looked for another way to help me stand up. He grabbed my shoulders and pulled me up. Since you're the winner and I'm the seeker who found you, I have to give you a prize, he said when I was standing properly. He sounded bored, as if he had recited what he said several times in his mind. What kind of prize? Russia stepped back and bowed formally in front of me. He looked up and offered his hand again. Sir, the human, will you dance with me? My breath hitched. Was I dreaming? Was this real? Was I seeing things right? Was Russia Sinclaire really offering me a dance? I blinked a few times and pinched myself to make sure this was real. When I stopped, he was still in front of me, and the spot I pinched was already hurting. Russia Sinclaire is really asking me to dance with him. My brain could not absorb what was happening, no matter how much I told myself it was real. Maybe Russia noticed I was confused again, so he made another way to force me to accept his gesture. He pulled me by the waist and clasped our hands together. Whether you like it or not, this is your prize. You have no choice but to dance with me, and so do I. I didn't object anymore when he said that. Like he said, we both have no choice. There's no music, so how can we dance? I awkwardly asked him. He thought for a while I kept looking at him. As we're so close to each other, I feel like the oxygen around me is running out, and I can't speak. After a while, he dropped his phone to the floor. A familiar song by the band Stateless started playing on his phone as he clasped our hands together. Bloodstream, how ironic. Don't ruin the moment, he said before rolling his eyes at me. But I still think he picked that song out of irony. We just have a little problem. I don't know how to dance. I shyly said. I felt that he needed to know that for his safety, because there is a big chance that I will step on his feet while we are dancing. Just follow my lead. Russia gracefully swayed to the slow tempo as the music played. He led the dance and I followed. The music and the sounds of leaves being blown by the breeze were the only sounds I could hear around us, because neither of us had uttered a single word. The silence that filled our surroundings felt comforting rather than deafening. It felt nice. I would have never imagined that I would dance with someone tonight, let alone with Russia Sinclaire. He was a good dancer, probably because, as a pureblood, he was given the privilege of learning many things, including the art of dance. Just by looking at him, I could tell that he was good at everything. He has a confident aura that demanded attention. This made him difficult to ignore, especially if you were standing close to him. Consider this dance as my way of saying sorry to you, Russia whispered as the music continued to play. For what? We exchanged position for a few moments as he answered. He let out a deep breath before speaking again. For what I did to you before. He softly said. Is he referring to the time he almost attacked me? You already said sorry. It was against my will, because I hadn't fully accepted that I was at fault back then. This apology is more genuine. A small smile appeared on his lips. I'm also sorry for teasing you the first time you apologized to me, I sincerely said. I riled him up back then because it was funny to me, but I didn't realize it wouldn't be funny for him, especially since that was an apology that wasn't from his heart. He chuckled. I almost forgot about that. Apology accepted. The song ended, but we remained in the same position. Our hands were still clasped together, and his other hand was around my waist. I didn't let go, and to my surprise, neither did he. I found myself getting lost in his dark eyes. From afar, they appeared impassive, but in close, they looked like they were holding back emotions. I let go of him and took a step away. I should probably head back. He nodded. Yeah, you should. New Zealand has been wondering where you are, and she hasn't taken that stupid smirk off of her face since she found out you won. I wanted to chuckle. New Zealand probably saw a vision of everything before it happened. I nodded to Russia and then bowed to him. After all, he's still one of the purebloods, and I was only a mere human. I have to show respect to him. He is a pureblood, and I am just a human. I repeated those words over and over in my mind to let reality sink in, because I think whatever I'm feeling right now, I need to stop, or at least keep myself from ever letting it grow. My heart has a mind of its own, and letting it control me could ruin everything. Many girls liked Russia, and I never thought that I'd become one of them. It was fun looking at him from afar, but now that my feelings are starting to go deeper, it's not fun anymore. If he found out how I feel, he would probably think I'm no different from the girls that fawn over him daily. That's the sad truth. I turned around and was about to walk away when I felt his hands on my arm. I flinched at his touch because I was surprised to feel his skin on mine again. I turned back to give him a confused look. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but you look beautiful tonight, America. My name came out of his lips so naturally. Hearing it made my jaw almost drop. A surge of emotions coursed through my chest. I smiled at him before taking a deep breath and walking away from him. I appreciated what he said, and I hope my smile conveyed that, because I feel like my tongue retracted because of what he said. Russia, I don't mind your compliment, but you shouldn't have said that. Anyway, that's the end of this book. If you're wondering why this book got dropped, I'll tell you why. 1. Embarrassment. 2. It actually broke one of my rules. I have a rule, and I think I'm pretty clear about it whenever someone requests something. The book has to be complete. I went into this thinking it was complete. I found out it is not, because it has a second book that is continuing the same story, and that's incomplete. And it's noted that you should go on to the other one and finish there. And that one's not going to be completed. Therefore, this is an incomplete book, and I didn't know that. As for what's next, I'm going to be doing a Hetalia book. We're going to be doing Beneath the Surface, one I've actually been looking forward to because I remember reading it and I really liked it. It's Beneath the Surface by Unnamed Untold. Yes, another thing from Unnamed Untold. I love their stuff. Fight me! Well, if you find that out if you've been able to listen to me ramble. Anyway, I hope you have a nice rest of your day, night, or whatever it is for you. Just enjoy your time, and I will see you tomorrow.